We talk to the legends of the creative and entertainment industries. We talk to those on the rise. Lance Dean Anthony Nielsen asks about the highs, the lows, and everything in between. This is Outcast Creative, and this is Industry Interviews.
Hello, can you believe it's the 2-year anniversary of me starting this channel, the current form that it's in, this week? And the first thing I did was interview number 1 with Jason Fleming, with my special guest, the Critical Drinker, and Mula. Had Dickon on that as well, who's the co-founder of the Outcast Theatre Company, and the lovely Suzette Pluck from Birmingham as well, who's running Outcast acting classes up there. And that was our first interview in July of 2022, I suppose? Or 2023? No, 2022. This is interview 66 since then, and I'm going to try and hit 100 by the end of the year. Now, this guest is amazing. I've been trying to connect with this guest for the best part of a year. I first saw her acting in the excellent television series Chicago PD, which everybody know I'm a massive fan of, big fan of Jason Bigg. She had a great role, great narrative, and I just thought, wow, this is somebody who really is doing something with this part. Give my casting director a call, said, put this name on your list of people to look out for. And I've just watched her career go from strength to strength until then. She's bagging excellent roles left and right, and it's quite easy to see why. Shall we check out a bit of the work? I think we should.
Nice work hiding that selfie.
Was stealing one of your moves?
Oh.
Well, I'll spare you the indignity of asking. I'm not offering your client any deal.
I haven't even begun my defense. You don't know what's coming down the road.
Is it better than a selfie with the corpse?
No. Offer me a deal and you don't have to worry about it.
Okay. I feel bad having to spell this out, but there's no deal for you here, Annalise. And when I say here, I mean this whole office.
That sounds like prosecutorial misconduct to me.
No, just payback for years of bad behavior. We're done?
Such confidence.
Your Honor, I've been running point on an investigation into Annalise Keating's potential involvement in a number of unsolved crimes. We approached Wesley Gibbons with an immunity deal in exchange for his cooperation in building the case against her. Mr. Gibbons did not sign the immunity deal, but you can see he made notations which prove he was about to accept the terms. Unfortunately, he left the station and in just a few hours was killed in a fire. We proffer that Mr. Gibbons went to Ms. Keating's, told her about the investigation, which is why she killed him.
Your Honor, there are other suspects the DA's office is refusing to look
Our
into. The victim was an eyewitness in the Charles Mahoney murder trial.
Well, the evidence points to Ms. Keating.
Clearly, the Mahoney family had motive to kill Mr. Gibbons.
Miss Winterbottom, you asked for more evidence. This is it.
Well, what to say? We could have watched more, but then YouTube will probably copyright me again and block the stream, so we don't want that to happen, do we? Let me welcome Milauna Jackson to the chat. I have pronounced that correctly this time, please.
Milana, yeah, you did.
I think I've got your name pronounced wrong on about 7 or 8 of my videos, so I apologise. And I think I've done about 3 variations as well, so I do.
You're not the first.
It does look like it should be Milauna or something.
Yeah, the you. I always have to explain to people that the you is intentional. My mother just wanted to make sure people didn't call me Milana. She wanted me to call Milana like laundry. In her mind, she heard laundry and she wanted it to be like Lola Falana, which is what my grandmother actually encouraged her to name me. My mom originally was going to name me Milani. And so it's interesting when I meet people and they call me Milani, even though they know my name. I'm always attributing that to just some kind of kindred spirit because that was going to originally be my name. And my grandmother liked something that sounded powerful.
Oh,
And
sorry,
so,
lost you for a sec there.
oh, that's okay. She wanted something like powerful, like Lola Falana. That's who she had envisioned. That's who I believe was her muse. And so that's how they came up with Milauna.
So, first of all, thank you so much for giving up some of your free time to come on the stream and to talk to us on the channel. Really all about supporting people in the creative industry, but also about sharing knowledge. And you're someone who's always come across as quite, for want of a better word, deep and quite spiritual human being, because I've seen other interviews with you. I've read your kind of story on your website and stuff. And I thought, yeah, this is a kindred spirit. I've got to talk to this person. They're going to have interesting things to say about a range of topics. So I've been really looking forward to this interview.
Me too.
Let me hit you with my standard quick-fire questions. Let's get those out of the way, because that's a bit of a tradition on the channel. We can't be breaking that now. So can you tell us what was the very first movie you saw on the big screen when you were a kid? You know, the first one your parents let you go and see, or maybe they took you to see something.
Oh my goodness. So I contemplated if I should share this story, but I think this is perfect.
You absolutely should. You absolutely should share.
Okay. I was a kid, obviously. I had done something. My mother was disciplining me. And I wanted to see this movie. She knew I wanted to see this movie, and she gave me an option. She said, you have two choices. Oh Lord. She was like, you can either go see the film or you can get a whooping. The sadist in me was like, whoop me, mommy, whoop me. I want to go see this movie. And it was The Last Dragon. That was the very first film.
As in Berry Gordy's?
Yeah.
No way.
Oh my God, I'm getting hot. I have to fan myself. Because I'm telling this story. I don't think anybody knows this story publicly. Yeah, and honestly, I think my mother couldn't believe it. She thought that, she didn't recognize this side of my character yet. She hadn't actually considered the fact that I might really, really love cinema, the impact of cinema. And I'd seen, obviously, films on video and things like that. But there was something about The Last Dragon with Vanity and Timac and what is the actor's name? I can't think of the actor's name. Who
talking about the really tall guy who played Sure Enough?
Yes. It was. And let me tell you, Lance, this is the thing that's so interesting about me. It was so worth it. Like, I felt like this was an introduction to my life, and it exposed me to things that kind of reflect my journey. And that's the belief of you being the one, you having a purpose, you fulfilling that purpose in spite of the obstacles, in spite of the people who may deter you, in spite of bullies, but you still can persevere. And that's what I learned from that movie. So it's always got a special place in my heart, The Last Dragon.
Did you find the power of the glow?
Oh, absolutely.
Look, I've got something to show you. Isn't this interesting?
Show it to me. Oh my God! Yeah.
The vinyl soundtrack to The Last Dragon, and the 80s club that I go to, they always play without fail. It's like first Friday of the month, and we're all over 30, which is, so we're all of a similar age. Without fail on the playlist, always play Rhythm of the Night.
Oh my God.
I'll be dancing like a mad person when that song comes on, and I'm doing the dance from the video as well, because I remember it. They were dancing in front of the cars to Barge. I had the biggest crush on Vanity as well. Her life story is so tragic, actually.
It is. It's an interesting story. ultimately ended with her committing her life to God and
Yeah, I
being in
saw
the
that.
industry. Being in this industry as long as I have, I completely understand. I know that's my foundation. I know that's what continues to fuel me. My faith and belief
You could
is
you could play her in a biopic about her.
oh
couldn't
well,
you?
I received that. I received that.
Yeah, you could. You could. You because you got. I mean, you're kind of like ageless. Because what I've noticed from your show reel is that you don't actually age. So
Yeah,
you know, you could probably play her when she's in her 20s, right up to
yeah,
mid, sort of late 30s.
yeah.
I would, yeah, I love that film. I mean, it's cheesy, but I remember all the lines.
I
Eddie
know.
Arcadian, and
What'd you say?
Eddie Arcadian.
Yes, yes. Oh my God, it was so cute to me.
He's got that crazy girlfriend. Eddie, when are we going to shoot my video?
Oh, you're talking about the producer. You're talking about the producer. I thought you meant the little
Yeah,
boy. I forgot his name.
yeah,
The
but
little,
he's also the guy who owns the nightclub. He's got the
right.
piranhas in the fish tank, and
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
uh,
Oh my God, I haven't even seen that film. It's been so long since I've seen it. I forgot that the Rhythm of the Night was attached to the soundtrack. I forgot all about that.
well, we're doing quick fire questions. We're gonna spend half an hour talking about
Sorry,
Last
sorry,
Dragon.
sorry.
So let me. Oh, it's entirely my fault. Let me fire off on the rest. What's the last film you saw at the cinema
The last film I saw. Oh
on the big
shit.
screen? Yeah,
Yeah.
it was Horizon.
Oh,
Horizon for me.
it was what?
Horizon for me. The Kevin Costner thing.
Oh, I want to say let me make sure this is the right. The Creator. The
Okay.
Creator.
Yeah,
Was
the
last
sci-fi.
film. Yeah,
The
the
sci-fi
sci-fi.
thing
was trying
by
to
Gareth,
watch.
directed by Gareth Edwards.
Yeah, that was my last film.
Okay. Can you name a British actor or actress that you'd particularly like to work with that you haven't worked with yet?
Ooh, that I have not worked with yet.
Yeah, so you can't say Philip Winchester because you've worked with him.
No, yes, I have.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to say Ruth Nega. I like her.
Oh, okay, yeah,
I like
fantastic.
her.
She is amazing. Supposed to be a really lovely person as well. Can you name one of your fellow countrymen that you haven't worked with yet, who you'd really like to work with, actor or actress?
Nicole Bahari.
Okay, good choice. Good choice. I'm liking these choices. Name a favorite film of yours that you watch at least once a year.
A favorite film of mine I watch once a year.
Yeah, you have to watch it at least once a year. Like with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I have to watch that at least once a year for me. So
Trading Places.
Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, fantastic
Absolutely.
film.
And don't forget Jamie Lee Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis won an Oscar for that role, Best Supporting Actress. Yeah,
she did.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she got an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for that. Pretty sure she did. Well, she certainly got nominated. She certainly got nominated. I can't remember if she won, but she certainly got nominated.
Okay.
Because I remember that nomination took everyone by surprise, but she was so good in it.
She was excellent in it, and John Landis directed the film, and so it was just.
Yeah. Have you seen his movie Into the Night with Jeff Goldblum and Michelle Pfeiffer? A lot of people haven't seen that film. I think it's very underrated, where Jeff Goldblum, the insomniac, and he gets caught up in the drama with Pfeiffer when he can't sleep. He finds out his wife's cheating on him and all the rest of it.
Into the Night.
That's right. Thank you, Blue. She got a BAFTA. My casting director, Sharon Sorrentino, is watching, who was watching your show reel earlier. So, Sharon, not that I'm putting you on the spot, Sharon, but please do let Alana know what you thought of it. Can you tell us a film that you like that maybe you might consider a guilty pleasure, as in it's not necessarily particularly critically acclaimed, but you love it?
Oh, that's a good question. That's not critically acclaimed, but I love it. Okay, let me think. Give me a second.
If you're struggling I can chuck out some examples if that would help.
Okay.
like, you know, Chuck Norris Invasion USA is many a person's guilty pleasure. That's someone here.
Oh, I know. I
not
got
a critically acclaimed movie, but quite fun.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna say this because this is a film that I saw recently. I hadn't seen it in years, and I saw it recently, and so I'm gonna say it, Gremlins.
Okay, well, I mean, I think Gremlins generally considered to be a good movie, but you can have that as a guilty pleasure. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it today, you know, when you really look at it today, you can see. Oh no, I have another one. It's still a classic. It's a cult classic. Well, they're probably tied. Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh my God, I absolutely love that movie. I've also got vinyl to that in another box right behind me, which I won't fetch out because I'll disappear on the screen for 5 minutes, but I'll grab it at some point. I took 18 people to see that for my birthday. That was my first official birthday movie outing when I was a late teenager, and it was Big Trouble in Little China. Yeah, on the opening night, Squares
with Kim Cattrall.
Yeah, it's such a good movie. Tell me, in the last 20 years, so let's go from 20 after the year 2000. Okay. What would you say? And I'm going to exclude a choice from this because people are always picking it, and it's getting a bit boring now. So I'm going to say you can't pick The Wire. Okay. So apart from The Wire, tell me a television series which you've watched since the year 2000 that you've gone, wow, oh my God, this is amazing. This is pushing boundaries. I would love to do something like this one day. What would that be?
Okay, so this is challenging for a number of reasons. I was contemplating this whole weekend, and I'm just gonna go with it. Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have to literally articulate why I'm saying this. I kind of contemplated a couple of other shows, but there was something about Game of Thrones that pulled me in because that's not my genre. Like, I don't typically run towards those kinds of TV shows. I'm not a big, I'm just not a big fan of that kind of, show. And there's been so many other examples that I've tried to lean into.
I know why you liked it.
Why do I like it? Tell me.
I'll tell you why. Because the first 5 seasons, especially, and especially the first 2 seasons, the whole thing really leans into Shakespeare, and it's very, very Shakespearean, and it's also it's kind of a soap opera, but in the best way. And when people used to ask me, "What's it like?" I said, "It's Dallas. It's about warring families." Dallas, the TV soap, but with dragons in it.
Right.
And you could take all the special effects out of Game of Thrones, including the current show House of the Dragon, which, by the way, is amazing. I've interviewed one of the cast on here. It's a great interview. He actually came to the studio sitting next to me, Will Johnson, and that series is already better than Game of Thrones. Because I mean, now you've mentioned that, I'm going to have to ask you the question: did you not think last season they dropped the ball with that show?
For Game of Thrones?
In the last season, did you not think they dropped the ball with the story and the plot? Yeah. Everyone was in a rush to get off and go and make other TV shows, and the number of episodes got reduced, and it was supposed to be 2 more seasons, not 1, and then it was a real mess. And that whole massive battle. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying I like to talk, so you gotta jump in.
No, go. No, you're the guest. You do the talking.
I was saying it was unfortunate because sometimes in our industry, we forget about creators or the executives, forget about the fans. And that's a key component to the success of any show, but particularly a show like that because of the budget. And, this is also what you said is absolutely right. Those are the exact reasons as to why I loved it. But I also loved that no one was safe.
Yeah.
And so that adds an element of tension for the viewer, but I would imagine also the artist to bring different choices. That was one of the things working on Strike Back. MJ Bassett and goodness.
I'm going to ask you about that later for sure. Anyway.
Okay, well, I'll make it brief so we can come back to it. MJ Bassett told me when he cast me on Strike Back, he was like, and I know why he did. I appreciate it, and I haven't forgotten it. He was like, there's always a bullet with your name on it, right? And so it reminded me of my mortality as the character.
Right.
Like we're at war. It's an international show. So there's always someone aiming for your head. There's always so just have that level of heightened tension, always prepared to potentially not make it at the end of this episode, as opposed to knowing I have 4 seasons, I've got 6 seasons, I've got 2 seasons in my deal, so I'm not going anywhere. And you can kind of sense that sometimes when actors know that. But when you don't know, and a show like Game of Thrones showcased that a number of times, it made me more interested. And I also appreciated, to be completely honest with you, the fact that they didn't compromise, from my perspective, they didn't compromise any of the casting to placate to celebrity. I felt like there was no jumping the shark on, casting some person who didn't fit into the world. Everybody seemed to essentially be right for the roles that they portrayed. And I actually have an actor friend that was on. His name is Nonso. He's a British actor.
Oh, and you know Nonso Alonso.
Yeah.
I know Nonso.
You know Nonso? Yeah, we met through my mutual brother, who's a talented producer, director, writer, and actor named Damon Smith. He was the liaison between connecting me to Nonso, because when I was filming internationally, Nonso was filming Dracula, and so he kind of grounded me a little bit more while I was out in Hungary, kind of trying to figure out, why I'm on this show and how can I contribute the most of, the most in the most productive way in a world that was very new to me, which was action. I had never done action. I was never even the actress that imagined that I would be doing an action TV series, particularly one like that. And Nonso was a great supportive system. So I'm always rooting for him.
Nonso is an absolutely wonderful, warm, genuine human being with a heart of gold. And also on top of that, incredibly talented. And actually, when you read that screenplay, the one we talked about, we won't get into it here. You'll know the role that's him. You'll know it straight away. You'll know within 5 pages of reading it. You'll go, I can see that. Okay. Straight away, you'll know. And I've been trying to get him to come on here, actually. So maybe now he will. Seeing as you mentioned that you were new to action, I don't know about that. I think we should see you in action.
There's the target. Okay. How much support you got? 36. It's definitely a 4-stick job. Ready?
Okay. Well, it's funny when you think that some people pay money to run around with airsoft guns to do that for fun, but you got to do it and get paid for it.
It's true. And I have to say, I always have to give myself grace, particularly for that project, because I had no training prior to getting to set. So I trained literally on the job. Typically, you have action sequence, you have choreography, you have to learn stunts, physically training. I went from doing hardcore drama victim roles to playing a badass special black ops ex-marine soldier. And I've never shot a weapon in a way that would look good on camera. So I had to go to the range. I had to learn how to not just load a weapon, but change my mag while we're filming. In case the mag jams, I had to learn how to clear the jam and then reload. And I had actually done that a few times. Unfortunately, they did not capture that on camera, which I wish they would have, because nobody, I don't think, believes me. But to be able to do that with the assault rifle, because we are at war and we are fighting terrorists globally, I needed to be proficient in a way that made me look comfortable, at least so that I could feel comfortable. And I did. As the season progressed, I got better in a way that it just made me feel proud about what I could accomplish and what's forthcoming.
Well, you carried it off. Great question here from Douglas A. Barton, who's a well-known chap, actually. Roughly how many takes for an action sequence like that? He's asking.
Douglas, I would say, that's actually a good question. Let me think.
That was probably filmed in a day, I imagine, that battle sequence.
Oh,
a day.
Yeah, definitely. It's long. Those are long days,
Yeah, I know.
Days, period. But because it's a continuous sequence, it's not a lot of stop start kind of action. It's just a continuous motion. So I would say maybe we did that about 5 times.
Long takes, multiple cameras.
Yeah, long takes, multiple cameras. And then obviously we have to do I'm just saying, like, the wide shots, the long of me running or us running across the field. And even that, I thought that was cool. I was like, because I'm not big at paintball. I don't want to get hit. I don't like the feeling of that paintball hitting your skin. I'm always bruised after playing that kind of sport. So I'm not big on paintball. I will say that.
I got shot straight in the mouth on my first paintball game. And my lip swelled up. I looked like Donald Duck. It was like huge, and I was worried it wasn't gonna go down.
Yeah.
But it did go down. But there was me and another guy. We both got hit in the same place, so we were both walking around with these like huge lower lips for the whole game. It was. It would be comical if it wasn't so painful. But
yeah, it is comical, but if it's not painful. But when it is painful, it's not funny at all.
Yeah,
and then
the
other thing is, I've seen women get hit in the face. You're not supposed to aim for the face, but you are supposed to aim for the target. And so some people or you're not supposed to shoot your weapon in the close proximity of the target. And a lot of people don't always follow those rules because adrenaline is pumping. And if you're talking about teams and things like that. So I've not played paintball in decades. But when I did the show, it did make me feel like I understand the appeal to paintball. Like this is all scripted. We all know what's going to happen, but I still felt very athletic, and I'm not an athletic person. I'm a creative through and through. I love every aspect of the arts, and gym and sports is not a part of that.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because, when we were shooting The Journey out in Greece, which was my last feature that I got to direct, we had a scene with two mercenaries, and the budget was so tight because I started off as an actor. I'll play the second mercenary. It's just the one scene, and we had to run around with machine gun. There's this big long trench inside this factory. So, oh yeah, cool. We'll planned it all out, sketched it all out, and everything. We shot it in a day, but after the second take, I was knackered. I was wearing body armor. It was really hot. It was probably hot there because that was shot in South Africa, wasn't it? And I was like, second take, dripping with sweat, doing these big long takes, running around with a gun, crawling through things, and I was like, oh, this looks like fun on the TV, but man, it's physically
work.
exhausting.
It's really, it's a lot of work, and you're not, unless you are actively training for this kind of project, in my opinion, or you're just natural, your athleticism is above average, you are going to be tired. You're not, and then you don't have the liberty to rest because we're on a schedule. We have to get this shot before the sun goes down. You know, there's certain parameters we have to stay within in order for this to work, you know. So it was South Africa. It was my first time in Africa, which honestly, I even revel in how I was chosen to be a part of this because I just never saw it. I see a lot of things in my future, but I just didn't see that one. And so I didn't feel like I was qualified.
Special Forces woman with machine gun was not one of the things that immediately came to your visions.
No, hell no.
Well, that's acting, baby. So, you know, there you go. That's acting.
That is acting. That is acting.
Well, look, as we've segued into Strike Back, I don't know. I'm not too rigid about the order of this. Let's cover this topic now. It was season 4, Shadow Warfare. Philip Winchester was your co-lead. Shot in South Africa, Budapest, Hungary, and it directed by MJ Bassett, who's funnily enough, my Jason Fleming, my older brother for all intents and purposes, who has been on the channel many times. He was attached to a project of Bassett's called Solomon Kane, and they worked together for ages to get that movie made. And that was right at the beginning of MJ's career. And he also did a movie called Death Watch, which several people I knew worked on it with. But you worked with Rona Mitra as well. Is that right? Did you have any scenes with her?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Did you meet Chris Ryan?
Chris Ryan.
Do you know who he is?
That name doesn't.
Okay. I'm going to jump in. So this IP is Chris Ryan's. Chris Ryan was one of the original survivors of the SAS mission Bravo 20 that went into Iraq behind enemy lines. So Chris Ryan wrote the original Strike Back novels. He's the author of the novels, which then got turned into the television series. And I know on the first two seasons he was often around, but I don't know if by season 4 he was still about. I think early on he was quite heavily involved, but I think probably by season 3, going into season 4, Sharon would know because she worked on the show.
Right.
I wondered if you got to meet him.
I don't recall. To be honest with you, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't put my money on it. But I don't recall meeting him. I don't recall. I'm looking at his photo, and may if we did, it was like, you know, like a brief encounter. It wasn't
sure. He might have done a set visit one day.
Yes, exactly. And it could have been a day that I wasn't there, or a day I was on set. I mean, actually filming, rather.
So this is a question I think which actors watching this stream will always be interested in. Talk us from start to finish, you getting cast in Strike Back. It wasn't your first role, and people can look on Milauna's IMDb. All the links for Milauna are right down below already. But you've done a few other things, but it certainly was a role that helped put you on the map. So talk us through the audition process from start to finish. Presumably you had an agent at the time. They submitted you.
Okay, this is an interesting story. This is
We
reflective.
like interesting stories. Please
Yeah.
go for it.
I actually was with an agency that I had been with for a number of years. It was during an interesting part of my career when things were slow, and the agency dropped me, and I wound up getting with a very small agency. That small agency this was just a matter of a few months to inspire every actor and any creative being listening to this. I was dropped by that agency, let's say June. I auditioned for an HBO pilot called The Brick, and they now, I think, coined it as a TV movie. I don't think they even label it as a pilot anymore. Let's say in August, September was when I booked it. We filmed it in New York in November. There is a story that goes with this, but we don't have a lot of time, so I'm gonna put a pin in that.
All right.
I booked
Come
that.
back to that one.
Yes, to tell you how, from my perspective, how God works, how everything is ordained. It's all intentional. There's an intention behind everything that happens in our lives, even when it's devastating, because it was devastating for me to be dropped by an agency I'd been with. But I understand that things happen the way they're supposed to. I do this pilot. The pilot does not get picked up. The lead of that pilot is John Boyega. John Boyega, I met with his rep. His rep is a British agent. That British agent asked me about how things were going since I had done the pilot, how my career was going. We decided to work together. My very first audition with this agent was Strike Back.
That would have been with Identity, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I like you, Lance.
You had a good person go to bat for you there. Very much so.
So my very first audition was Strike Back. My friend, my brother Fran, I have to establish him as, we have a stronger bond than just friendship. He's like a brother of mine in LA. But particularly in this industry, he looks out for me, and he recorded my audition. And I remember, it's so funny. I remember when I auditioned for Strike Back, it's procedural material, and I didn't really feel like that was a strength of mine. I had done so many narrative characters, you can develop this whole world, but procedural was, I wasn't trained like that. I started in theater in Chicago, so I didn't know how to process that kind of jargon, particularly in the military. I have cousins who served, but I didn't know how to say it so that I knew what I was talking about. He helped me.
Sure.
I auditioned maybe on tape 3 or 4 times. And here's the thing, like after I did the first tape and sent it in, they gave me a note to wear a vest in my audition. So the second time I put on a literal vest. I'm so literal. I put on a vest and did the audition again. And then they gave me another note and they were like, can you ask your client to wear a vest? And I was like, I don't know what does that mean? Like, I have on a vest. So we did the in person. They flew me out to London, and I had to do an actual screen test with a producer in MJ, and they bought me tank tops, which apparently are called vests in the UK. And I knew after they put forth the effort to not just fly me out to London, but actually gave me wardrobe, I had an inkling that I was going that they wanted me for the role, and I booked it before I got back on the plane to come home. So it was about 5 auditions. Yeah.
Let's go back to the beginning. How did you get started? When did you get the acting bug? And I know you started in theatre in Chicago. So talk us through those early days.
Yes. How did I get the acting bug? I would say it was implanted in conception, to be honest with you. My parents met in California.
Right.
Lived actually in Hollywood. So I lived in LA as a kid until I was about three and a half. My mother always says three and a half. We moved back to Chicago. So when I went back to Chicago, I was constantly doing things that resembled acting. Like, not, I'm an only child. I was raised as an only child. I have brothers and sisters, but I was raised as an only child. So just being at home in a room by myself, I would find dialogue in the Bible. I would find dialogue any place where where he said this, books, like anything that had that was presented as something that was in a narrative form. I was reading it. I was doing the voices. I was always, imitating. In Living Color was out at the time, and I remember imitating Homie the Clown and
Right.
Jim Carrey's Fire Marshal Bill, and I was doing all of these things that just were creative. I was always a participant in a church program, any church that had a Easter program. Who wants to sign up? I was the one who wanted the longest monologue, wanted the most extensive speech in school.
Give me the biggest part now. This kind of thing.
Yes. And I
imagine.
feel like my cousin told me this, and I do believe it, that I didn't know how to articulate what it is I do now, but I was always saying it. I was always, affirming my right to be able to shine in this way. And my mom put me in everything. She was one of those parents that was like, I'm going to put you in karate class. I went to charm school and learned how to model, learned etiquette, which on camera, which helped me with commercials, which helped me to be able to handle dialogue that I wouldn't copy, rather, that I wouldn't necessarily have access to. So we were always, like, again, as I say, my eyes were always on that path. I just didn't know how to get there. And so it took some time, because I grew up on the south side of Chicago. And I have to really acknowledge that there aren't a lot of programs that steer you into the business of being an actor. There are programs that are available for you to have fun, for you to learn who you are, develop characters and things like that, but nothing to really kind of prepare you for the business of the industry. And so it wasn't until I became an adult that I learned, like, oh, I need a headshot. And I went to a performing arts high school in my sophomore year of high school. They had a drama program, and my teacher was Miss Munkus. I did have pictures. Like, my mom knew, because she had dabbled in taking some commercial classes, and she knew about, the need of having pictures, headshots,
Sure.
but just not, it was like, I'll take the picture, and then we'll blow it up in an 8x10. And, so it's not like a competitive tool that you use opposite child actors who are auditioning on a regular basis that go to a studio. So I wasn't really competitive enough to pursue it in a way that allowed me a chance to audition as a kid, but I did have the materials. So I was always a little advanced for the south side of Chicago. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. No, so did you, in terms of sort of making that leap from doing bits at church and whatnot, did you get into some non-professional productions first, like theater plays, college plays, that sort of stuff? And then
Yes. So I went to Howard University after I graduated. I graduated with honors. I did really well academically in high school. Obviously,
what was your major university? Sorry to interrupt.
Well, at the university, my major was communications, because I didn't want to do theater, and I didn't know. was so ignorant about how to pursue the craft that I thought if I major in communications, which is the School of C at Howard, it's called the School of C, you can have your discipline be film, television, and radio. And so I thought that that was the acting aspect of.
You're giving away your darkest secrets here. While you're having your giggling steak, Blue Collar Luna says, "I'm sorry I haven't watched all of her shows. I looked Luna on Instagram, and now I need a very cold shower. I'm happy for her. What happens when you put bikini pictures up on Instagram? You got to watch out for that."
This is true.
So,
but this is a part of not having access like we have today with the internet. When you don't have the internet, you can't just Google shit. You have to go word of mouth. It's referral based. And the only
you were getting into this pre-social media, weren't you? It was just you were before that.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't know. So I thought like, oh, okay, I'll go to the School of Community. I'll go, be a student within the School of C. I like to talk. It'll help me be a better communicator. And then that is how I will go in film and television. Not knowing it was, that's media. It's mass media, it's mass communications, it's all technical shit. I didn't know that. So I wound up leaving Howard, and then I came to Los Angeles. And when I came to LA, I still was doing academia. I went to the School of C. I was still kind of trying to find my way. It wasn't until I went back to Chicago after that. When I went back to Chicago, I said, okay, I'm running away from theater, but maybe that's where the answer lies. Maybe that's where I can meet my peers. I can be introduced to the world from a very beginning stage. And while I may not want to be a theater actress, I can start there. And so I did. My mom knew Jackie Taylor. Jackie Taylor is an infamous Black woman. She is from Chicago. There was a connection with her and my family, and she has a theater company called Black Ensemble Theater. She did a play at the time. She was doing a play called The Jackie Wilson Story, starring Chester Gregory, and that was my first foray into theater. I started at the bottom. When they say start from the bottom, now I'm here. I started from the bottom. I was an understudy. I did some stage management work. I loved all of the things that I was doing, except for the fact that I didn't get a chance to perform. So obviously I took that awareness and knowledge and then started pursuing other theater companies and auditioning for other playhouses. And so I had done some community theater. I worked with independent filmmaker. Her name is Cookie Hughes. She had a play called Father, I Stretch My Hands to Thee. It was a community theater production. And when I tell you, Lance, it was my first time being in a professional, semi-professional production, where you're selling the tickets, basically. You're filling the theater with your friends and your family. Like, this is how we succeed.
I swear I was doing that just a couple of years ago, but
like that's a real component to the industry.
It is always like that, really.
That a lot of people just never get exposed to. Their careers are different, so they start out maybe in film, or they start out on a TV show, or even if they're doing a play, it's off Broadway, or some great playhouse, or maybe not as good of a playhouse, but it's still reputable. This was a community house theater. And it was my very first time recognizing, yes, that's Jackie Taylor.
This will definitely be one of the mentors of your early career. This is going to be someone you're going to mention in your Oscar speech.
I received that.
Yeah.
I received that.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, she'll probably be like 3 names ahead of me, something like that.
Because I will say, because she was in a film called Coolie High. Coolie High is, Coolie High, the classic Coolie High, Glenn Turman, Lawrence. Oh goodness, what's Lawrence's last name? Oh my goodness, the actor. I can't think. I'm blanking right now. But she was no.
Lawrence Fishburne?
No, it's I don't no, hold on. I have to look it up now. I don't want to embarrass myself anymore. Cooley
That's
High.
all right. My brain does that all the time. I can never
Lawrence
remember
Lawrence Hilton Jacobs.
Lawrence Hilton Jacobs.
Yep, Lawrence Hilton Jacobs. So you know, this was big. It was shot in Chicago, and it was actually my mother went to Cooley High School. It was about a high school, so she went there. So it meant that film particularly meant something more to me because my mother had always said that's Jackie Taylor, that's my cousin's aunt. So it's just through marriage we're connected. So to go and as long as I can remember watching Cooley High, seeing this woman, to then, you know, being introduced to her, and she's like, yeah, oh, you want to be an actress? Okay, yeah, come to my theater. And then I start, you know, very humbly learning how to develop my craft to becoming who I am today. I couldn't tell the story without including Jackie Taylor. And it's really important, I'll say, because I wound up leaving Chicago and moving back to LA to pursue my ultimate dream, which is being an A-list film star, an actress, leading a film. It began with me knowing that then. So I didn't have to wait until I knew I could do it. I knew then that it was possible because there was no one who told me that it wasn't, that I was around at that time. It wasn't until I came to LA that people began to plant seeds of doubt. But in Chicago, I wasn't surrounded around a lot of those people. But I do have to say this because you asked me about my journey, and I don't.
It's all really important stuff. This is Cooley High for anyone who doesn't remember the film.
Yeah.
It used to get played late night on BBC Two in the,
really?
The 80s. Yeah. This got played on British TV a couple of times.
That's hilarious.
Kind of like a sort of almost not quite Porky's, African American Porky's almost, but it's leaning in that direction. Not quite.
Yeah, it's
not quite as infantile as Porky's, but definitely leaning in that direction.
Yeah, no, I understand why you say that. I get why you say that. There is a authenticity to it. The director wanted that, and that's because he actually cast some real actual active gang members in the film to play gang members in the movie. And so that added a heightened sense of conflict in a movie about, you know, coming of age story of guys graduating from high school to pursue their dreams as adults. My point is that I started as an extra. So anybody that I knew, you know, my mom had met someone actually who had a connection to the industry. He had done a film called Soul Food. Excuse me. He had done a film called Soul Food. Yeah. And she told him that I had a dream. And how do I get started in a real professional way? And he gave me the blueprint of how to get started with having a reputable agency and, you know, competitive photos and building a resume. And so I would just go from doing background work. Another film that I'd done background work on was Chain Reaction. So I'd done like these, you know, films that were shot in Chicago as a background artist. And then I began to audition. And one of my first auditions was Save the Last Dance. The reason I mention this, obviously, is because I had auditioned for a speaking role. It was actually a large speaking role, but I wasn't ready for that kind of material yet. And was just so determined to be in the movie that I was like, I could dance. So I had auditioned to be a dancer in the film. And the choreography paired me up with Janet Jackson dancers, and I was failing miserably in my opinion, so much so the director was like, okay, so we're gonna have you leave the dance floor and walk to the bar.
during the scene.
They're doing the scene, right? Exactly. And it was the only thing that made it. Like the dance sequence part that I was involved in didn't make it. But you see me literally walking up to the bar, and it was the first time that I met and was introduced to Kerry Washington. So to go
Right.
from being, yes, to go from being a background artist, watching an actress who looked like me, who reminded me that this is possible, who inspired me and motivated me to keep going. She's from New York. Obviously the film was shot in Chicago. I began to, my mind began to open up to greater possibilities, obviously, so much so that I'm starring opposite Kerry Washington in my new movie.
One of the first sort of decent speaking parts that I remember you doing was in an episode of Without a Trace. You played a character called Lucinda Biggs. And that was a great show. It sort of had that 24 vibe, it was like we're on the clock, someone's missing. If they're not found in the first 48 to 72 hours, that's crucial time. And it's a fantasy show, really, because the police are so overwhelmed. You never have these teams working all out when people get reported missing. It doesn't happen very often. We've had big cases in the press recently about that have been disastrous. But wow. Tell us about bagging, because you got Dexter around the same time. These are two fairly big iconic shows. That must have felt like, I'm starting to feel like I'm on my way now.
Shit, you couldn't tell me I hadn't made it. I moved to LA 2003. I remember working at Chili's. It was one of the many jobs that I had before I began to book my first job, and it was Cold Case, actually. After I'd done Cold Case, ironic enough, it was set in the 60s, and it was about illegal abortions, which is interesting that now we're back dealing with that as women. But that was the same kind of concept, right, of it being a heightened level procedural show. And it's CBS. So to go from that CBS show to Without a Trace, which is obviously a CBS show, and I played this woman whose kid was being taken from my house, and my husband was Sterling K. Brown. We actually played husband and wife in that episode. And I realized that was like the first time you realize the impact of working with someone who's as committed as you are. It's like, we're collectively pursuing this in a very intentional way, as opposed to, I just want to be on TV, or I just want to be famous, or I just want to act, and I think I want to do films. I'm not quite sure. This was only my second credit, and the very first one was Cold Case, and obviously that role is quite different from this one. So to do Without a Trace and then do Dexter, which was directed by Tony Goldwyn. I have to put a little note in that. Tony Goldwyn connected Kerry Washington and Scandal. I had an opportunity to work with him on that project. But again, I was still finding my legs. I'm still trying to figure out how to be a craftsperson, how to, what I have to contribute to a character, what I have to contribute to this industry. I was still trying to find my legs. And that's the beauty, I think, of television, doing co-star roles, guest star. Without a co-star, the Cold Case was a co-star, and Without a Trace was my first guest star. So after that, I began to realize the business side. It's like, oh, okay. So if you're going to do a co-star, you can do those, but you have to understand that there are levels to this. And with each level, you'll have to improve your skill set in order to get to the next level, that kind of thing. So I'm Dexter, and then after that, I forget what I think it was, maybe Lincoln Heights, I think.
Yeah, you did a couple of shorts, Redemption Song and Grace Hereafter. Then, the next big thing you got was 3 episodes of Lincoln Heights.
Right.
Sidell Glass or Sid.
Yeah, the glass house. That was the game changer for me, because that was the first time I had gone from watching a TV show actively to being on the show. It's a difference when I didn't watch Cold Case. I don't think I saw Without a Trace at the time. I definitely wasn't watching Dexter. It was a little dark, and I don't think I could afford Showtime. So but that's the reality.
Did
But
you work with Nikki Marshall?
What'd you say?
Did you work with Nikki Marshall on Lincoln Heights?
Oh yeah. No, I didn't.
Nikki,
We didn't actually work together. I worked.
Did you meet? Did you?
Yes.
She's coming on the channel. She's coming on the channel in 2 weeks.
Oh, good.
I've been trying to book her for nearly 2 years.
I imagine she's been busy.
Yeah, because she just directed Summer of Violence, so she's going to be coming on talking about that. But
all of my scenes, honestly, she was, I want to say, on maternity leave at the time. So most of my scenes were with Russell Hornsby, who taught me so much. He is one of the most giving artists that I have ever worked with. He was so patient. He was very present. He helped me when he saw that I was struggling, and he did it in a very, very supportive way.
Yeah.
I also, yes.
Working with a giving actor in a scene can make a huge difference, as opposed to working with somebody who doesn't care about the other actor in the scene, and it really shows. And I don't understand why more actors aren't like that, because at the end of the day, you end up complimenting each other, and it brings out the best of both of you.
That is so true, and he taught me that. And I had met Russell, and he probably didn't remember it when I worked with him on the show, but I was at a theater, I don't know, maybe 3 years, maybe not 3, maybe 3 or 4. He had just come to LA, and someone introduced me to him. And I remember thinking like, oh, this is interesting. You're what? Like, he looked like he had just moved to LA. Like, he was so fresh faced and so excited. And then when he booked the role for Lincoln Heights, it was like, oh my God. I was like, this is the guy that I met at the theater. And I don't think that was the next project he had booked after meeting him, but it just resonated with me that you have these encounters with people and you just don't know what the outcome of it is going to be. And he was and he was pleasant and present when I met him then. So to go from meeting someone who's very open to then working with someone who's very open, and also getting a chance to work with Chadwick Boseman, who had actually
my God, I forgot you worked with him.
I had the privilege of meeting Chad before he began acting. He professionally, I will say, in film and television, he was really into writing and directing, and that was his pursuit. So I met him in a casting call for his own film called Deep Azure. It was a poetic style script. So it was almost like, written in prose. It was so creative and was so beautiful. And I was like determined to be a part of it, that we kept in contact during the beginning of that phase of his career. And then he began to work as an actor. And so we never got a chance to work together until Lincoln Heights. And we both thought, obviously, after Lincoln Heights, like, okay, this is the start of it. He played a soldier that returned to their house, the family's house. I can't think of the family's last name, but he returned there as it was like a recurring character. And I was recurring.
Yeah, didn't he have sort of PTSD or something like that? I remember.
Yeah. He had PTSD, and I was the one who had broken into the house, and then they invited me back. And so it was like there's a moment in the scene I remember when we shot it. It was like, a moment of recognition that we added because we had history, but obviously they didn't go in that direction with the show, but we kind of incorporated the fact that we knew each other. It was like, I've seen you before. what are you doing here? Like that kind of connection thing,
Right.
to create chemistry, to just to help to create more storyline within the show. And then obviously he took off in the film realm. And then unfortunately,
He struck me as somebody who was, for want of a better phrase, very non-Hollywood. Very grounded, very real. Yes, okay, he went into the big leagues and he did Marvel and Black Panther and all of that, and you know, he got that A-list dream that everybody wants to get. But he felt, you see some people like that, and you get a set. I'm not going to. I could mention some names, but I won't. You get a sense that these people kind of lose touch with reality, really. You know, he always felt to me someone who was very, very in touch with his roots, totally respected his own journey, didn't look down on anyone, didn't feel people were beneath him. And I remember actually that my ex-partner said to me way before his illness was public, she said, there's something not right about him. He doesn't look right. I think he's ill. I think he's fighting cancer. And I was like, really? How do you know that? She said, no, I couldn't just tell. She could just tell. It was really crazy perception. And literally about 6 weeks later, the news was public. Huge loss to our industry. A man truly taken before his time, but nevertheless made some fantastic contributions to television and cinema. What would you say was your one takeaway from the time that you got to associate with him?
Wow, that's a. Oh, I'm trying not to get emotional. Okay.
I know it, but that's okay, because I like to keep it real here, and I think talking about the human side and the real connections that we make in an industry which is actually quite unapologetically brutal and awful 90% of the time. It's lovely to pick up and touch on these more genuine stories. So I love going there. I hope you don't mind.
No. I want to share this. I just have been waiting for the right platform.
I have some tissues here if you need them.
Only because I was introduced to him before Hollywood really was exposed to the celebrity. So I got to meet the man, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Which makes all the difference.
It makes all the difference. And so there was no pretense. There was no like barrier that was created because you had to be on a certain level to be able to access him.
Yeah.
So what I learned at the time, and it was, once the last time I saw Chad was while he was preparing for Get On Up. That was the last time he walked me to my car, and I don't think I saw him again after that. But during that phase between the Get On Up, am I saying it right? The James Brown film.
Oh yeah.
Between that and his commitment to writing, I learned the value of confidence. So while he was casting the role of the lead female, he was going to play the lead male. I was auditioning. I was up for the lead female. And then there was another actress, model. She was mainly a model. I don't think she had done any acting at all. She was just a model and a reality star. But it was between the two of us. And I didn't have as much confidence at the time. And he taught me the value of it, believing in myself. He taught me that I was worthy of playing the position of a leadership. At the time, I would have been, it's considered ingenue when you're first starting out. So, your teens and your early 20s, you're an ingenue, and then something happens like late 20s, unless you can still play young, you began to go out for older roles that are leading lady roles. And he was one of the first creative beings who assured me that I was capable of being a leading lady. He also taught me the value of withstanding all of the naysayers, withstanding the doubt, and what that looks like. Because who cares if you have the experience in this business, right? You don't have to have any experience in this business to book a lead role in a film or on a TV show. It's a lot of time about relationship, or about look, or about, we have a product to sell and this person can appeal to the market. So there's so many other components to it that I hadn't quite learned until I met him, and he began to be more giving than a lot of other people in the industry with no strings attached.
Sure.
So I also will say, I always think when we would meet up, he was so anti-celebrity and anti-Hollywood behavior, and he was like, I don't want to be a celebrity. That's not what I'm into. I just want to be a director and writer and help people. And then to see that he actually became the A-list actor that he became, it showed me that there's a plan for you that sometimes you don't know you want until you're exposed to it. You have no idea. Like, as of right now, I am working on my writing skills. I never thought I would be interested in writing at all. And I'm not even in a position to want to share my writing. I don't feel it's ready yet to share with other people, but I know that's a component of my life that I have to invest in. Me becoming a better storyteller is because I did have a good 3-4 years of pounding the pavement at the same time with Chad. One last thing I'll say is I'd done a film, my very first feature film in Los Angeles, because I'd done some independent films, and I did an independent film in Chicago that finished to completion, and I did another independent film that lost the financing. But the one that actually did finish to completion, my very first film, I was a supporting player in that film. It's called 1 Week. And when I came to LA, the very first film that I booked, I was the lead female in that film. It's called Bolden. And at the time, this is directed by Dan Pritzker of the Pritzker family. He has plenty resources to shoot a film. He's a billionaire, so he has lots of resources to shoot this film. And they were doing some recasting. It was Anthony Mackie and myself. He played Bolden. I played the wife. And right. Anthony began to work in Marvel. He began to do more stuff where his schedule was busy. And so the director asked me, was talking to me about recasting. And Chad was one of the men I mentioned. I mentioned him and Aldous as the two potential players that could play Buddy Bolden. And I remember talking to Chad about that. And unfortunately, Dan didn't go with Chad. But it was just, it's just interesting how people come into your lives in ways that you never expect. And sometimes the effort to help doesn't happen instantaneously. But I would imagine that it did help spiritually, because I was, rooting for him to succeed. And when he did, it was bittersweet to not be able to see that side of him. But it was beautiful to watch.
Well, I'm sure he's looking down on you now, the smile, hearing that story. Yeah. And actually, Doug said, wow, there's a part of Chadwick's mentorship that lives on in you, and you're passing it on to us. So, that's a pretty profound statement right there. I'm going to skip ahead a bit so we don't miss some of the juicy bits of your career today. So 3 things I definitely want to cram in are Chicago PD, Animal Kingdom, and of course, How to Get Away with Murder. These are 3 iconic shows. I'm a big fan of Animal Kingdom and Chicago PD. I'll be honest, checked out after season 2 of How to Get Away with Murder. I felt the show was starting to go around in circles, and it started feeling like it was breaking the rules of its reality. Like when you start putting invisible cars in Pierce Brosnan and James Bond film, it starts feeling a bit silly. So I actually specifically watched the season with you in to prepare for this. So I went back to that. But Animal Kingdom I watched from day one. Chicago PD, it was one of those shows that I started watching. I think there were already about 4 or 5 seasons of it out when I started watching it. So it was like I was always looking for the next gritty cop show after I've been watching The Shield. And I went from the Shield to Southlands, which is amazing, Regina. And then so good in that, so good. And then I went from, she's amazing. And then I went from that to Chicago PD. And I thought it was going to be another kind of quite soft Law and Order, but I thought, no, this is actually quite dark. This is like Homicide, Life on the Street. This is quite gritty. I like this. And sure enough, there you popped up in a role there. Let's deal with that first. I mean, I know you were only on one episode, but it was a great part. Fabulous part about a girl who's kind of got a really good heart. She's got messed up with the wrong people. She falls in love with a cop who's undercover, and there's great chemistry between you and that actor. I think we showed a clip of that at the beginning. I mean, it's a fantastic little story. I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, so we won't talk about what happens at the end. Okay. I was gutted. I was like quite tearful when. It was
one of my favorite roles to date. One of my favorite. The reason is because it was directed by my friend now, but at the time we weren't friends. I was just a fan of her work. Her name is Christine Swanson. She's a director who
I know exactly who she is. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, she's amazing.
Amazing director.
She really is. Like, it's interesting because I was introduced to Christine's work through a film festival. Her film was All About You, and it was at ABFF, which my very first film 1 week actually premiered at ABFF at the time. It won, and then I think her film premiered the year after that. And so I was introduced to her work in that capacity, right? So it's just being a fan in a theater watching a film. And I loved how she captures Black women, Black love. I love her perspective as a storyteller. And so this is in alignment with this episode. She inquired about, there was casting. She wasn't quite finding what she felt like was magic, because she operates from a spiritual place as well when it comes to casting, which I love. And they wanted me to audition. It was the first time my agency felt like I had done enough work in television where this could be an offer. It was a direct offer. It wound up being a direct offer. And so I wasn't prepared. Usually when you have an audition, they give you multiple scenes from the episode, right? Especially something like that. They would tend to give you 9 to 12 pages of material. So you're already familiar with the character because you've been working on it through the audition or through the callback or even just for the producer session. But this was a direct offer, so I didn't get the material until I showed up in Chicago, which was beautiful that I was filming in Chicago because I hadn't filmed anything at home since I left. So my very first project after having left Chicago was Chicago PD. What I loved about it, again, going by Christine's vision, is this was a woman who had a past. It wasn't that she was just hanging with the wrong people. She was a child. She was an infant. She was a kid. She was a teenager who dated a man who was in the game. He was in the, in the dark world, so to speak. It was in the streets. And that's a part of her background, which was actually not exactly the same as mine, because I did date guys who, I wouldn't date now as a grown woman, but as you know, a teenager, you don't know. He's cute. He's cute.
Bad boys get old when you go after 35. That's why I keep telling one friend of mine who's still going down that road, and she's not a very happy person. But
yeah, like you make immature decisions as a kid, and that's what I loved is that it hit home. And I understand how things happen with association. And my mother was very adamant. I was a latchkey kid. So my mom was very adamant about me being aware of, you know, my friendships and connections and ties and things like that, while also being very active herself in the city of Chicago. So I knew a lot about what she was talking about. I could bring some real true connections to her commitment to changing the community. She was a community activist, and it was interesting, the dichotomy between her being a community activist, dating a cop who, particularly during that time, but even today, there's an issue with police being able to properly conduct themselves when it comes to interactions with Black and brown women and men in the community. But in Chicago, for me, it was different. Like, my mom had a lot of cop friends. She was a single parent. So they were allies. They were seen as allies from my perspective as a kid. And then I became a grown woman, and I began to see the bigger picture. So I was able to bring a lot more to it. And I feel like Christine knew that we would have great chemistry because he was also from Chicago. He's from Harvey, which is a suburb of Chicago. So you have these two people who authentically can connect with their love for the city, their commitment to the craft and the role, and also wanting to make this episode shine because it was his first opportunity to play the love interest. He had never had a woman on the show that he could be intimate with and, you know, share a moment with in a way that you really get to see Black cops do. So I liked that component to the show. I also will say that Jason, the lead guy, I can't think of his last name, but Jason,
Big,
yeah,
is it Big? Yeah. I'm very interested to know what it was like working with him because he's a powerhouse presence in every scene he's in. He doesn't have to try very hard, does he?
No, he is a powerhouse.
He does that thing where he kind of nods his head a bit and sort of does that kind of thinking thing.
And he advocated for my character to actually do, like, without giving it away, he advocated for my character in a way that no one else on set did.
Right.
Because I think he liked how I contributed to the role. I think I added humanity to this woman. She was written as a one episode off. Guest was just, you do just this one episode, and then that's the end of her storyline. And he wanted to see my story continue. He wanted it to flourish.
I felt the same. I actually thought that you were being introduced as a character who was going to end up working for the squad.
That's what he advocated on set. Yeah. And I had never experienced in this business somebody really like fighting. And it was a lengthy conversation between him and the executive showrunner, producer, the writer, and a lot of people wanted it. And the one person who didn't was the person who had the power. And he said, no, that's not the story that this needs to be. I won't use the word because I don't want to give it away. But I knew at that moment, it was like, okay, since he couldn't help me out that way, he was definitely going to help me out in my scenes. And there were moments, even in the clip that you showed, there was a moment that I didn't quite connect. And he helped me. He was like, this is what it is. Do it like this. And I was like, oh my God. It just solidified everything that I felt about me being there, which was that it was ordained. And Christine, being able to work with her, that was the very first time that I was able to work with her. She let me play. And so that was also fun because I didn't have the strict parameters that are set up for us sometimes on a set, where you feel afraid of being your best self, for fear that you might be too big or you might do too much. But this was like, no, go for it. You know, what do you have to lose? At the end, you'll have nothing to lose. And Jason encouraged it even more. And then obviously the chemistry between me and Leroyce was what Christine saw in her mind. So she knew that in her mind that chemistry was going to be a key component to her episode, because this was the episode she was directing. It was a key component to the episode, but also to the show. And not every director can do that. A lot of directors don't know what organic chemistry looks like in film or on camera, and she's one of those that's gifted with that ability.
I think it's all about having a trust, creating a space of trust on set, and allowing people to breathe and do their thing, obviously within the confines of the time and hectic schedule that productions have, and just having those kind of little pre-talks in private about, you know, what do we want from the scene, what's the best way to get there, and just never being afraid to have those conversations,
right?
You know? And that's part of the skill of being a good director, is to know when to not direct as much as when to direct. A lot of directors feel the need to direct, but if someone's doing exactly what you want, and they're sort of, this is more of the same, please. You know,
right.
More,
and she's also big on rehearsal, which I love.
I mean, if you can have them, it's a lot, but as we know, it's a luxury most of the time. Rehearsals.
Well, we would schedule rehearsals on Saturday, on the off day. Like we were utilizing our free time to rehearse.
Nice, you're hardcore. I like it.
Yeah, that's really what I love. And she's from Detroit, so she also is like the Midwest Chicago, the D. Like we had, it's like cousins, you know, like we related. Right. That's family. And so the fact that we could all come together with the commitment to making this the best episode we can make, and then I saw the outcome of it, just makes me want to. She knows this. We will work together sometimes very soon, God willing, and the creek don't rise. But at that moment, I was like, I definitely want to work with this woman again.
I don't think that there's I say this with confidence, I don't think that there's a single director that you've worked with who doesn't want to work with you again. And I'm certain that plans are afoot with more than one person for that to happen as we speak. Wow. So there you go. Trust me, I'm like the whisperer guy in Game of Thrones. I hear everything. So you also worked on another favorite show of mine, which was Animal Kingdom. And what was great about that was you worked in the storyline set in the past, where we got to see a younger version of Smurf. And it was a really interesting story because they were basically two grifters that met up when they were young. You played the part of Pam, and you were kind of pulling off scams together. But Pam also already had responsibility. She had a kid, and she was looking at the bigger picture of life, and she was already a bit wiser to the road to actual happiness in life, as opposed to, you know, gratification now, which is kind of more where Smurf was coming on. But now, here's a question I've always wanted to ask you, right?
What?
I think Pam was in love with Smurf. True or not true? True or not true? I think Pam was in love with Smurf.
I thought the same thing, to be completely honest with you. Just
so did you underplay that current? Because I really picked up on that in the performance.
Yeah.
Oh, I knew I was right about that. I knew I was right about that.
Well, I don't know.
Going, she loves her. You like, I pointed at the telly and went, "She's in love with her. She's in love with her." I can remember it clear as day.
Oh my God,
that was such a good. It was such a good choice not to overplay it, though. Just to keep, you kept it so subtle. Most people probably wouldn't have picked up on it, but I did, and I think it was really good choice not to kind of overplay where that was coming from, but if that was your choice, it was such a good one.
That was my choice. That was my secret.
Sorry, so yeah, go on.
That,
you were gonna tell us a
that
story.
was my secret. That particular show. Oh, okay. When I auditioned for it, I remember I went in and I did a scene, and the casting director gave me a note. And I remember this was the first time where the casting director had given me a note, and I didn't listen to the note. I felt like I saw it differently. And I think that's what led to the arc that I create that you see now. The writer of the show was a Black woman. She actually approached me, and she loved what I did in that very first episode where they introduced my character, and she wanted to create this storyline. So I was like, following my instinct in my audition, in spite of, I took the note. I'm wise enough to know this is a collaborative effort, right? So a casting director gives me a note. I'm going to do the note.
Can you tell us what the note was?
Okay, so there's a line where I'm a waitress when Smurf and we have our first encounter.
I remember. I remember the scene.
And so I want to say, I can't remember if it's in this scene or not. I would have to hear the lines. I think it's in the scene where I say, well, why don't you just work with me? Yeah. Meaning like leave the crew and then join me. And the casting director was like, I think she means like leave the business of crime and become a waitress at the diner. And I was like, in my head, I was like, hell no. I was like, that doesn't make sense. My character doesn't even want to be at the diner. I'm literally robbing them. So clearly I'm a scammer. This is what I do in order to survive. So why would I tell her to leave her guys to come work a job that I don't want to be at? And I didn't commit fully to his adjustment. I committed to my instinct, which is leave them and join me and let's do our thing. And most of the roles that I've been blessed and privileged enough to be cast in, because I know that it's a privilege to be cast in a role, and this business is competitive and it's hard. But particularly for me, my career, it's usually 1 or 2 episodes. So I'm rarely given like, this is a character that's going to be here for a multiple episode arc, for the exception of Strike Back. And even Strike Back originally was like, we're going to kind of see how she works out. Like they didn't want to fully commit. They kind of, we were just, it was a situationship. They didn't want to fully give me the commitment, but let's just see how well she works with.
Let's make sure she can fire that gun properly.
Exactly.
Commit to this person being special forces.
Yeah, exactly. So Animal Kingdom was another example of that. It was like 1, maybe 2 episodes. So I said, okay, how can I be impactful to a show that I watched, Animal Kingdom, and respected like the fuck out of Animal Kingdom. I really appreciated the TV show.
Nikki Marshall's on that show as well. You've both been on it.
On Animal Kingdom?
Nikki Marshall, you played a detective on it on an earlier season before you.
Oh, I didn't remember. I just remember her from The Shield. I forget that she did.
Yeah, well, that when she appeared in The Shield, that's when I started following her career.
She was great in The Shield. She was great.
She was. That's another one that popped up in one of my favorite shows. Oh, she's a good actress.
Yeah. But what's interesting to show again the connection is Sullivan Stapleton from Strike Back. So it was Philip Winchester and Sullivan Stapleton. Sullivan, we call him Sully. Sully actually started in the film version of Animal Kingdom.
Oh, so the Australian.
Yes. You know, he's awesome.
I saw that at the cinema.
You did?
Yeah.
Wow. So to tie to in my life, I like to connect I like to connect threads, right? I like to web things together, loose ties. I like to bring them together. So that was one of the things that I kind of brought to Animal Kingdom, was I was already exposed to the world because I knew it was about a real family, a woman and her sons. And I knew that there was a film. So if I'm going to be a part of a TV version of a film that's starring Ellen and these amazing actors that I respect, this is what I can bring to it. So that's the secret that you mentioned. Knowing that I wanted her to work with me as opposed to working with men. These are components that I kind of added that weren't in the script. They weren't in the sides. It didn't even allude to it, but just my instinct led me down that path. And that's how I wound up getting the number of episodes that I got and the number of seasons that I got. And also, as I stated, it took for someone in the writer's room to see the vision for Pam. And it was a Black female writer who saw the vision of what Pam could be and how she actually was the impetus to creating Smurf. Like that was the whole origin story. That's why in my mind, I was like, of course she would be in love with me because of how my character operates and what she does and who she became. It all started with my character, Pam.
I think this would be the writer that believed in your choices, no?
Yeah.
Vanessa Baden.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I forgot Vanessa's name. But yes. That's
all right. Don't worry. I like to give all the people that don't normally get mentioned a shout out. That's very much what my channel's about.
Particularly when it comes to, I just want to say this, Lance, really quickly, to encourage people who will watch this, is because you don't know who's advocating for you. Like, you just don't know unless they tell you, you don't know. And so instead of feeling like we're in this by ourselves, which I have often felt alone in this business and alone on sets and alone in scenes where it's a whole ensemble. There are people who can see the vision too and inspire them to create the kind of career that one dreams for or dreams of. And I think that's my journey, is that I have touched the lives of people creatively in ways that I don't know until they tell me. And my job, though, or my commitment, not my job, but my commitment is to do great work and to master my craft. And the only way to do that is by being challenged. You can't master something if you're not challenged. And Animal Kingdom definitely challenged me in ways that really just showed me how sometimes people don't like your contribution to the role because they may feel like it overshadows their contribution to the show. And that could be something you have to navigate. And I learned a lot of it throughout my career, a lot.
I think your best line in Animal Kingdom, and I wrote it down, was when you said, kids aren't the worst thing if you can take the beginning. You got anybody to love you like that? It was the way you said the second line. It was so loaded. And I was like, oh, yeah, man, this is so good. So I don't want to miss out on How to Get Away with Murder, which is, I mean, again, huge role for you. You know, you're going up against Viola Davis and holding your own in scenes with her quite capably, I might add. And you were basically her nemesis for this season. You were like, like The Shield, there was a kind of major bad guy every season. Like Glenn Close came in at one point in one season. This was you. You came in. And I thought it's always quite good fun to play a complex villain, because when writing is at its peak, it's never good guys and bad guys anymore. It's everybody's got shades of grey. It's always nuanced. 1 minute you're rooting for a character, then you hate them, then you like them again because they do something that redeems themselves. It's very human. It's very real. And I liked that about the way this character was written. You got to work with Benito Martinez, who is just a powerhouse Mexican character actor who's been in some fantastic stuff. Again, of course, in the Shield iconic role. So when I saw you in this, I didn't watch it until recently, but when I saw you got cast in it, and I saw some clips of it a while back, I was proper excited. I was like, oh, this is so good for you, So, I mean, big audition process. Did you have to read opposite Viola for scenes? Tell us about it.
Okay.
I can tell there's a story coming here. You've got to compose yourself quickly. Okay.
So I receive the audition. It's for the role of the president of the university.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I get the material. I'm a fan of the show. Obviously, everybody's watching How to Get Away with Murder and Viola Davis. And this was the first time I recognized the power of our minds, but particularly when we implement self-doubt, what can happen in that process, right? So I'm sitting there, I'm looking at the material, I'll never forget it. And I was like, I don't see myself in this world. They're not going to cast me. They already have 2 brown-skinned women. Viola's a powerhouse. Like, why? Like, how am I going to play the president of a university? That doesn't even make sense. I'm not even old enough to play that character. I mean, it was all self-doubt and, talking yourself out of a job. I did all of that. And then the other side of me said, okay, so why not? Let's say you didn't want to pursue a career in this industry. Let's say you wanted to just be in academia. You're an intelligent woman who could be whatever you want to be in your life. Like, let's say you did want to be the president of a university. You don't think you're proficient enough to do that? And then my other side, literally in real time, I was like, yeah, I could do it. So then why can't you act like the university a president? Right. This isn't real. She's not she didn't really go to law school like this. I was so committed to the world as a viewer that I couldn't imagine myself joining them in this kind of role. So I talked myself down and said, let's pursue this like you absolutely went to school, you went to Howard, you graduated with your bachelor's, you graduate with your master's, you're in a PhD program, and they give you this role. So maybe you're not necessarily experienced or prepared, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't be the president of a university if this was what you were pursuing. Cut to, I go in and audition, and the casting director literally says, I can see you in this world. I can see you playing this role. I can totally see you here. I'm going to send you to producers. So I go to a producer session. The producer session has women who are older than me and younger than me. I'm really the only one in my category. It was like very, 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 very a contrast in the casting type. So I didn't know. I was like, what the hell? Like, which direction are they going to go in? I didn't know, but I was committed to my choice, and I was like, have fun. So I go in and I audition, and the director was a male director. He said virtually the same thing that the casting director said, except for the role. He never said I was right for the role. He said he could see me. He was like, he liked me, and I could see it felt and looked good, in my opinion, like I had done a proficient job. I did my job, right? Cut to maybe a day later or a few days later, my agent calls and she's like, yeah, they want to book you for How to Get Away with Murder, but they won't give me any information. They won't tell me the role. They won't even give me the sides. So I'm going to give them your email address, and she'll email you the sides. And when I saw the sides, I was like, oh shit, it was for that character. They created the character. That wasn't originally an audition for that role while I was auditioning. I don't know if they waited, maybe they had a trial audition prior to that. But when I was auditioning for it, they were casting for the love interest of, I think, somebody's love interest. And then obviously the president of the university, who wound up going to Luna Valdez, who her twin sister is the actress that was on New York Undercover, Lauren. So it's Lauren and Luna. So that role went to Luna, and then I got the role of Rene Atwood. And here's the thing that's interesting, Lance, you'll appreciate this. When when I first got the role, and I was like, oh my God, I was like, I have to be the nemesis to Annalise Keating. Do you know how many people love this woman? I was like, I would be enemy number one. I wound up thinking about The Shield.
Right, yeah.
Forrest Whitaker did so on the DVD.
Oh God, yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah,
I think season 4 or 5, maybe, I forget which one.
One of
that
those.
storyline is incredible.
He was the person who motivated me to lean into the loved of not caring about how the audience will feel about my character. His whole thing was he knew everybody loved Vic. Everybody loved Vic. And so if he's coming in trying to take down somebody that everybody loves, it has to impact him in some kind of way as the character, but also he has to fight against that, and so it is making it more complicated, as you said, creating more of a complicated character as opposed to just the antagonist to the protagonist, which seems pretty, remedial. But when you add layers to it, it's like, no, he had a job to do. And so that motivated me in this role. Your favorite show motivated me and my character in this role. And so one last thing. So when I finally got an opportunity to meet Benito was like, oh my God, you're Kim Martinez. I was like, yeah. He's like, I love that show. So when we would have like the downtime between running lines, we would talk about The Shield, him being on The Shield and me being on Strike Back. And it was just an example. And then he would tell me how he liked the choices that he would make and how to play this kind of character. So I learned a lot from working with Benito. I learned a lot how to handle a powerhouse like Viola. Prior to him being there, I was kind of really on my own because, obviously her crew, they're not trying to befriend me because I'm here to take them all down. So I always felt a little separate from them. And then, Viola didn't know that I was coming in. She didn't know that they had decided to have me be the one to come and steal her man. And I didn't know that either. She kind of pieced everything together on the spot my first day. And so it was an interesting ride. And I learned a lot. I wrote it down. I can't find my notes. Well, they over there and I don't want to get up. But one of the things I wanted to comment about was what I learned from her. And it really was that she worked with everything that I gave her. She didn't have preconceived notions or ideas about how the scene should go. If she did have an idea of how the scene was going to go, I would break it. I would do things that I know she wasn't prepared for because she said it. She's like, oh, well, if she does this, then I have to do that. And so we were able to work with each other in a way that
it's organic.
Validated the fact that I did deserve to be in this world. I wasn't classically trained. I didn't go through the traditional way that a lot of actors go, including Viola and many actors that I've worked with, where they go through a classical program, so they're trained through the classics. I didn't go through that path. I learned the community classics. I learned how to master my craft through community theater. So that's Black playwrights. That's, people who are being creative with limited resources.
Yeah.
To start there and then be told that I may not be competent enough to star opposite someone who has gone a more traditional, classically trained route. And then for us to be able to work together. And I felt like I really, truly honed my craft even more is because she was receptive enough to the things that I gave her. And it again, I think, prepares me for my journey and what's to come. I do feel God prepares you for what's forthcoming. So I imagine that working with her then, working with Carrie last year, is preparing me for the next co-star or co-lead that I have to work with in the future.
I met her once. She was on a tube in London, on the London Underground, what you call the subway.
Yeah.
And we locked eyes, and I went, "Oh my God!" And this would have been in 2009, I think. And I went, "That's," and then my brain went, and I couldn't remember her name. And I was directing an all-black female version of 12 Angry Men at the time. The perfect play. The perfect play to invite her to. And I was like, "I want to invite her. I've got to remember her name. I've got to remember her name." And then she got off. And as soon as the door shut, I went, "It's Viola Davis." Oh my God. And I was like, I was so tempted to run across platforms and try and come back and find her. Because I mean, I've got no problem going up to someone if I see them on the street and I want to walk with them. I'll go straight up to them and say, I'll introduce myself very politely, tell them I work in the industry and I really want to work with them at some point. But I won't do it unless I can remember their name.
Right.
You don't want to walk up to someone and say, "I love everything you've done, but I can't remember who you are." So
you definitely don't say that.
I missed my opportunity there and I knew exactly who she was, but I just had that brain fog where the name just goes out your head like you had earlier.
It happens. It happens to our brain, and particularly if you're not great with names to begin with. That's not my strong suit. Dates and names are things that I have to actively work on remembering. But I will say this is an interesting anecdote regarding How to Get Away with Murder. Before I booked it, I was working on Strike Back, and we were filming in Thailand. So I worked in Thailand, Budapest, Bangkok, and Krabi, and one other city. I think just the surrounding islands of like Phi Phi Islands. So it's Krabi and Bangkok mainly. But you got
a nice holiday out of that gig.
I did. I also became Patty certified to scuba dive while I was out there. So I learned new skills as well. But my point is there was very little television that is in English when you're in a non-English speaking country like Asia, right? So there was a TV channel that it was only one that had American programming. And they would play American Warrior all the time. You know that TV show have you ever heard of American Warrior? Okay, American Warrior and How to Get Away with Murder. And I remember looking at the show in Thailand thinking like, damn, like this is reach. They always say the Black women, we don't sell internationally. And it was the first time I was able to see with my own eyes that it was bullshit. I was like, because of all the programming that they could ever show on a network in Asia, they're showing her show because it was good. And I feel like that was my moment for me to really plant the seed of desire. My mom says I'm a seed planter. So that was my seed of desire for me to be on the show. And then, just a few years later, I'm actually on it. And at the time I was doing Strike Back and Aquarius. And I randomly met Viola twice through mutual, like someone that she was friends with. They invited me over to their house and she was there. And we had actually had a brief conversation about how I was able to film 2 shows at the same time. And then I go, that next year to working with Viola on her own show.
So that's kind of nice that you already knew her before you got there. It wasn't quite as intimidating as it might have been.
No, it was still she didn't remember me from there. It was a brief encounter. She didn't remember me at all. I can guarantee you.
Did we?
No, she didn't remember me at all. And I didn't even mention it. Like I guess the intimidation factor is why I didn't mention it. I wanted to just be great and excellent. And so I wanted to utilize all the things that I had so that I could be able to look this woman in her face and not see Viola Davis, but see Annalise Keating. And I knew if I could just see Annalise Keating, then I would be great at my job. and I got 10 episodes out of that when it was only technically going to be 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we saw a couple of bits of it on your show reel. You know, I mean, just looking at your reel, the quality of the work, as Sharon, my casting director, was saying to me earlier today, and actually she put a comment about it in the chat. I don't know if you saw it.
No, I haven't seen any of the chat.
No, it's all right. I'll put it up for you before we wrap up. So, yeah, I mean, I said, look, you know, look at this reel for me, please, and tell me what should stay in and what should stay out. And here you go. Great choice of clips. Here it is. Great choice of clips, and of course, very talented actress. And Sharon did intend to spell the word actress correctly, I'm sure, with 2 S's. But she's got a young infant at the moment, so I'd probably type that in with one hand and the baby in the other. And yeah, there you go. Her general thoughts on you. The quality of your work is incredible. Your versatility and also the leaps that you've made in the time that you have. I'm firmly convinced. Not that awards are important. I'm a bit with Woody Allen on this, because film festivals, for example, now have become really diluted. And I remember when I got one of my films into a film festival, and somebody who was connected to the festival said if I paid them £400, my film could be the closing film and would win best film. And I was like, well, I'd rather win it on its own merit and I'd keep my £400. Thank you very much. That sort of thing goes on all the time. At a really small film festival level, imagine what the big festivals are like, where it's actually quite important for certain projects to win certain awards. But putting all that to one side, all the backhanders and political nonsense, I do think there have certainly been occasions, and I could list them, where people have won Oscars or BAFTAs totally on merit for outstanding performances. And I'm firmly of the view that that's going to happen to you in your lifetime. You're going to be grabbing one, if not both, of those awards. And I will be applauding very loudly when that happens. Called it here first, just saying.
Yeah,
and
you are actually the first to publicly call it, and I received that. That was the dream before I even knew about the game. I was the kid that would watch the Oscars and sit and stand. Like, it was like, I was so corny as a kid. I'm corny now, but as a kid, when you're raised as the only child, you have to be your own entertainer, right? And so I would clap when the people came on stage and I would participate. And there was something as a kid about the Academy Awards that drew me in. And so I think that has fueled the choices that I make and the things that I say yes to, the things that I've said no to, including my most recent film, The 6888, which is about a real...
I've got that queued up, actually. I wasn't not going to mention it. It's already here. Let me just share screen. Here we are. I would show the trailer, but I think we'd get bumped for copyright. So, yes. So you're working with Kerry Washington again. 6888. It's not out yet. People can see the trailer. The trailer's on the IMDb page. Tell us about it.
So my character, you can see on the right, I play the CO, which is the second in command, the XO, the second in command to Captain Charity Adams, who's being played by Kerry Washington. My character's name is Abby Noel Campbell, and Abby and Charity were both real women who both heroes. I will have to acknowledge these women are heroic in their decision to go on a mission to redistribute the mail for the soldiers during World War II. They are leading a battalion of women, and the battalion number is 6888. So it just follows the life of a woman named Lena King, who just recently transitioned in January. She was 101, I want to say, maybe a few days shy of 101. I think she's just 100.
Sorry, just to qualify that statement, when you say transition, do you mean
she passed away?
Passed away, because that can mean an entirely different thing in the current day.
No, you're right.
I just said you'd be surprised. We get people writing in complaining. Have to qualify what you meant by that.
Yeah,
but-
she actually is. She went from being a physical being to a spiritual being.
I got you.
She died, fortunately, before the film came out. You know,
Did
obviously,
you get to meet her before she passed away?
just via Zoom because she lived in Vegas, and
Right.
so and it was during we have to remind ourselves this was during the pandemic, so
Yeah.
we had to be very clear of how we conducted ourselves because of the fact that she was in a home. So I was not privileged enough to meet her, but Ebony Obsidian, who is the actual lead woman in the story, is following her journey. She's the journey woman, so it's following her journey of entering the military, the Women's Army Corps, which is called WAX, and we are the women that are leading this battalion. And my character particularly there wasn't a lot of material. Unfortunately, these women, when after completing the mission successfully against all odds, no one thought that they could do it because the attempt had been made for 2 years and no other battalion was successful. So Mary McLeod Bethune, who was a real woman, civil rights activist, part of the women's suffrage movement, she had a connection to Eleanor Roosevelt, and they brought this to the president at the time, FDR, and they chose Charity Adams because she was so excellent at her commitment to being in the military during that time, and she didn't want to participate in this journey without someone that she trusted, which was my character. So these women are real best friends. They both devoted their life and their commitment to the country and being as patriotic as they could possibly be by succeeding, and returned to America and weren't honored. They didn't receive any kind of accolade, no parade. The male soldiers didn't even recognize them, upon their return. So they didn't really know the impact that they had made to the country. But what they were able to do, which is what I loved about being a part of this film, is you get to see the value of women working together with the intentions of making a change, right? So they created the postal system. The system that they used in order to redistribute the mail became the U.S. Postal Service. So they not only succeeded in their mission, but their mission was so successful that blueprint carried them from London to France. This is during the 40s. These women had never gone even on an airplane, let alone fly internationally, to then return to a country that refused to see them as human beings. And so they lived their lives not knowing that they had done this amazing feat until about 2018. There was a woman who I actually love, and she's like my family member now. I call her auntie. Her name is Elizabeth Helms. She is a U.S. veteran, and she was the person to kind of spearhead commemorating these women. And she saw pictures, like she would see this picture, and there's another picture of all of these Black female soldiers, and was like, how have I served in the military 20 years and I don't know anything about them? And so that research kind of spearheaded the opportunity for Charity Adams to be commemorated by not just the military, but the White House to recognize her. And so as you see on that, there's the monument. And so there were like at the time 6 women living. Now I think currently there may be maybe 3 that are still living. So hopefully those 3 will be able to see the film this year.
Yeah, it comes with a real responsibility, doesn't it, when you're telling a story, whatever your involvement, whether you're in front or behind the camera, of someone's life that really happened, even more so if it's during that very dramatic period of history of the 1940s, when we literally were locked in this kind of almost good versus evil Although, you know, there are of course a lot of aspects of that war that are not quite as simplistic as that. But at its core, that's what we were fighting for, and democracy and against tyranny and fascism and so on. And portraying these characters, I mean, I met several veterans. I have to be careful talking about this because I'll tear up. Who you know about the film that I did that was working on for a long time that didn't happen, and I interviewed 15 of them, and I have those interviews on camera, and I must put them on some kind of documentary at some point. And when we would interview them, the last question I would ask them is, anything else you want to say? And without exception, almost every single one of them, I think except for one, said, can you bloody hurry up and finish the film because I'm going to be dead soon and I want to see it.
Oh, wow.
And all 15 of those guys are now dead. Yeah. And, you know, that was a horrible burden to carry, knowing that you failed them in that respect. And I'll take that to my grave, unfortunately. I mean, it wasn't my fault that I failed them per se, but I still feel responsible because it was my project.
Yeah.
But so I think that I think when you're older, if indeed you do ever age, which scientists have confirmed may never happen, but when you're older, I suspect when you look back at your career, you're going to look back very fondly at this project for those specific reasons, in the sense that you have portrayed a very real part of history. And there are more stories like this. I mean, we've been trying to get the true story of the first black paratrooper to land in Normandy, who was in the 7th Battalion Airborne British paratrooper for ages. And there are lots of stories like this that have not been told. These people's roles have not been acknowledged. And your performance is going to bring that to the screen. And okay, maybe the person you're playing didn't live to see you portray that role, but do you know what? Their children and their grandchildren will. And they'll be there watching that film, and you will bring their past to life with your performance. And if it's anything like the other roles that you've done, I dare say that you're going to have done it incredible justice and done it beautifully. So
thank you, Lance. That was my biggest challenge. Charity there is a book written to honor Charity Adams. Is that my auntie? I'm looking now that
I'm looking at
the name. Elizabeth Fraser. Yeah, that's her. So she came to set. I have to say, she was the one who came to set this particular day, and she said, I don't know what any of you have done, but whatever it is, this film is going to completely change your life. And those words resonated with me. I took it to heart because I knew why she said that. I knew the responsibility that was presented to me. I had auditioned for the film for another character. It was a completely different character, and was filming Law and Order at the time that I was invited to do a table reading. So I was in New York filming while they were doing the table reading for this movie. So once I couldn't make the table reading, I had kind of written it off. I was like, well, clearly I can't do it. So I was offered the role of Abby Noel Campbell. And when I did my research for the original audition, I began to learn more about war and women who volunteer to serve in the military. So I had already kind of gotten a head start. Even Strike Back prepared me a little bit for military jargon and how to command and things like that. But this was different because my role is I am leading the soldiers in a way that you've never seen cinematically. You've never seen women do this kind of thing in film. So to be a part of a film that is going to be fresh in a way that not just honors them, but inspires other women who have chosen to serve for this country successfully and actually do it until they retire out of the military. I had to do my due diligence. I had to do my research. I had to watch film documentaries about World War II. I wanted to see other war films. I wanted to see, I'd never done a film that was a period action film. So I wanted to see what that kind of looked like. And it's still quite different because we are women. So we don't, can you hear me? I can't hear you. Okay.
I'm sorry, I muted myself. I was going to ask you when you said you watched some historical films for the first time. I had this in my notes. Did you watch a film called Days of Glory? French film about the French Algerian black soldiers that came over from North Africa to fight to free France, and they fought many a battle which was not acknowledged until this film came out. They took lots of casualties, and then when Paris was freed and you had the big parade of all the soldiers, you've probably seen footage of it. The black units were not allowed to take part in that march, including the French Algerian soldiers.
Wow.
And the other thing that happened was they racially segregated their mail. So any of them who had relationships with women that they met in the towns that they liberated, if they started, if there were letters being sent back to those towns, those letters in the mailroom would be destroyed because they didn't want them forming relationships with the women in France. And that film brings to light all of that. And the worst thing about it all, and this is how films can really change things, I firmly believe this, is that what Days of Glory did was it forced a debate in the French Parliament because France, because all the French colonies had long become independent, they refused to pay their what do you call it, the retirement wages for soldiers when your pension.
Yeah.
They refused to pay the pension of all the free French North African soldiers because their colonies became independent. They didn't think they owed them that money anymore, even though many of them had given their lives and fought and spilled blood in France to free France from the Germans. And as a result of the film coming out, those pensions got restored. But of course, for most of them, it was meaningless because most of them were dead. But
right.
It brought about that change. You definitely need to see that movie.
I will. I've marked it in my phone. I'm not. No, that wasn't one of the films that I saw, that I watched. And
I'm conscious of the time and the fact that you're probably getting really hungry. I mean, this is brilliant. I mean, we could listen. You've got to come back because we could talk. We could. If I hadn't mentioned it, we'd probably be chatting for another hour. And I so easily could have done, but I don't want to take advantage. This is the film in question, by the way. So just so you know, to look at the
Thank you.
Incredible French talent involved in this movie as well. You'll recognise some of the actors. They've gone on to many bigger things, and it's a very good film. But so we got 888-6 or did I get that number right?
No,
688. 688.
Yeah, the 608. Yeah,
we've got that to look forward to. We don't know the release date of that yet, do we? But it's going to be soon.
Yes.
Do you have anything else coming out that we should look out for, and kind of what's next for you, really? And do you want to plug or promote anything? Have you got a cooking book coming out, or?
No, I love to cook, but not yet. Not a cooking book. I am working in an industry that is new to me, but I'm a work in progress. I really am, honestly. So what's coming up that I'm most excited about is the film. Besides the film, I'm working on me because we are still, I'm still dealing with the experience of feeling isolated during the pandemic. And so what I have recognized is, although I've worked twice, I've done 2 films during when we actually had the pandemic, and then coming out of it, with everything that's going on now, I'm working on me. I psychologically, it was challenging to not know this, what's going to come from having this kind of global experience. And work is distracting, but when you come back to real life, you have to put the pieces together of how it impacted your life. And so that's what I'm working on, and I'm choosing to do that with my writing.
If only you knew an incredible writer who would be prepared to help you with that process. I think I might know. I'll give him a ring for you.
Okay, please.
I really look forward to your other creative endeavors. This has without doubt been one of my favorite interviews of the 66 that I've done to date. Wouldn't it be funny if it was 68 today? It would be 6. Nikki Marshall's is number 68. 68. And I mean, I've got incredible guests coming up this month. I think Milauna has blessed me with her positive energy, because as soon as you looked in a date with me, so did everybody else. So coming up tonight, I will be, of course, reviewing the latest episode of House of Dragon, which is one of the best shows on television at the moment. And we must get on your case to get in that show, I believe.
Yes.
We're also going to be reviewing Band of Brothers episode 10. We've been doing every episode, big breakdown. We've got some of the cast coming on that stream on Sunday. But then in 2 days' time, I have legendary film producer Charles Band, 427 credits on IMDb. He made all those movies that you and I rented out from the video shop in the 1980s because they had cool covers like Trolls, Ghoulies, Road Jocks, Terrorvision, Trancers with Tim Thomason, who's been on the channel. Tim set up the interview for me. Charles Band is a legend. He's like another Roger Corman, and I'm going to be so grateful to speak to him while he's still around. And then, of course, I've got the wonderful Nikki Marshall coming on as well. There's another of your contemporaries. I dare say she'll have some nice words to say about you as well. This has been amazing. I really hope you'll come back and talk to us again.
I would love to. Thank you so much for being persistent. And also thank you for being consistent.
I've worked on it my whole life. I think I'm finally getting there. We had a couple of comments I'll read out to wrap up.
Okay.
A lot of love for you in the chat. Blue, who's a good friend of mine, Chris, said, Milauna, TV actors used to be looked down on. The big movies were usually the end goal. Times have changed. Major A-list stars, actors are in TV now. Are you happy with your career? Your IMDb is impressive. I would say you're smiling about your career. So
thank you. Yes, I think my career is a component to me being happy, but that's what working on me means, is I'm happy regardless of my career. I want to be happy with my life, and I'm pleased with how my career is unfolding. So yes, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I really do.
This is from Metropolis now, who's one of my co-hosts on. He's the guy who co-hosts Band of Brothers. He worked on the entire series, every episode.
Wow.
Fantastic interview with the wonderfully gifted actress. I can't disagree with him there. Dan Campbell, sorry, I missed this question, Dan. Have you ever turned down a part you later regretted? You thought maybe it wasn't going to turn out to be any good, and then everyone's got one of those, haven't they? While you were thinking about... Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
I have no regrets. The things that I've turned down,
yeah, touch wood, it's been good. Okay, you didn't regret them. Gooch, who also interviews people on his channel, he interviews a lot of people in the music industry and comic book writers and stuff like that. Yo Lance and the beautiful Milauna Jackson. Wow,
thank you. And now, is this Gooch named after the Gooch from Different Strokes, or?
I could tell you a story about that, but we'll be digressing into a whole other rabbit hole. So I'll save that for another time. Douglas, this has been an absolutely excellent interview. Tons of substance and sincerity. Good luck, Milauna. Tom, who's been sitting here quietly watching. Thank you very much, Lance and Milauna. Bo Romeo, wonderful guy. How was hand-to-hand combat training? Oh, that's a late question to chuck in as we're wrapping up. But quickly, if you want to answer, please do.
Yeah, it was okay. It It was different. I actually landed one in my training. I actually hit the stunt man, and I gave him a black eye. So hand-to-hand combat training is not easy. You have to make it look like you're hitting the person without actually hitting them. So we did connect. But at the time, you know, it was a work in progress. But it was fun. I would love to do more of it. And I did some martial arts training as a kid, and then when I came to LA, I began to take different classes. I took fencing classes, and I took a taekwondo. I did a little Muay Thai when I was in Thailand. I took a couple Muay Thai classes just so I could get in get it in my body, get that kind of movement in my body, because I don't actively box, or I wasn't going to the gym at the time until I started the show. But it was fun. It was fun. It was fun. It was fun. I want more of it.
Bring it on. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up there. Just remind me to extend my sincerest thanks to Miss Jackson for coming on, and also being exceedingly generous with the time that she's given the channel. I always like to let my guests talk, and this has just been really insightful, and I just think the best kind of interview. And yeah, so Dan, don't be making jokes about Gooch in the chat now. We all know the stories, so let's not go there. Okay, so I'm going to be back in about 20 minutes, guys, on the stream talking about House of Dragon with a somewhat croaky voice, but it's been entirely worth it. So do check out the links for Milauna, for any of my independent film directors that have been watching the stream, and I know that you do all tune into these. Cast this woman or write her apart. You will not regret it, because she will be bringing something special to your project and to your set. And mark my words, it will be good for you from day one. All right, so thanks again, and we'll speak to you again real soon. Always remember what I always say on these things. Don't forget to call the people that you care about and tell them that you love them, preferably by picking up the phone, not a text. And we'll see you all again real soon.